being here this afternoon. I'm very honored to have YB Stephen Sim join me today. We're talking about economic reset and how, I guess from the standpoint of the Ministry of Finance, how startups are viewed and how we can all play a part in the economy of the country. And so thank you for being with me today. As I mentioned just now before we got on, this can be very conversational, so we'll take it as far as you want to go with it. But I thought maybe start with a little bit of a background, right? You've been in the role now for a couple of months now, and you've seen policy discussions around creating startups. Just from a 30,000-foot view, what's your background in terms of like looking at startups and what you think the role of startups play in the economy and specifically Malaysia's economy?
Thank you, Aaron. I mean, when I came into the room, I felt that I'm the odd one out because everyone seems so smart and energetic until you ask them how they are. Then I realized, okay, we are all Malaysians. But I think in terms of startup, you know, just as you were asking me that question, I recall I actually started a company way back when I was 18, 19 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was, so at that time, I know the buzzword among startups are pain points, right, these days. At that time, I realized, a group of friends and we realized that one of the pain points for NGOs are, you know, when you are focused on your area of advocacy, you have no time to raise fund. If you are spending too much time raising fund, then you have no time doing the real work of advocacy. So we thought at that 20 over years ago, we felt that maybe we should be the party to help them raise their funds. So we started a company selling chocolate to low-tech retail to help NGOs to raise fund. And one of our key partners at that time was an AIDS organization called the CASP, Community AIDS Service Penang. So I felt in that sense, from my very, very little exposure and experience being an entrepreneur myself, and now having to deal with, I was previously in the Youth and Sports Ministry, so I dealt with a lot of young entrepreneurs, and then now in the Finance Ministry, I think, I wouldn't say that I am an expert in doing business, but I think that sort of exposure, that sort of background gave me the opportunity to understand and empathize with entrepreneurs, especially.
I think it's really awesome, right? Like even from a young age, you had a venture, you went through the pain points, and a lot of people in the room today have probably gone through all these pain points as well. I guess where I wanted to go at this point was maybe to talk a little bit about, you know, some of the initiatives that may have worked over the years. One thing that we always talk about is how Malaysia has been very progressive in terms of supporting the startup ecosystem. We started in 1996 and 97 with MDC, which has become MDAC, and then Cradle started a couple of years later as well. In your view, what do you think has been the most effective in helping startups? And what do you think we could have done a little bit better to help startups in Malaysia?
I think at this point, looking back, you know, you mentioned 1996 and all, but I think at this point, looking back, we have about 7 or 8 funds for startup at all levels. You know, I like to say from cradle, not to grave, but to IPO. From cradle to IPO. No pun intended. Cradle is here. So there is this government involvement, sometimes too much. I felt that at times the government seems to be playing the role of a feeder instead of enabler, because I would like to see personally a more vibrant public or rather government and private synergy in terms of building the startup ecosystem. Not just the government coming in with fund, but also encouraging private capital, for example. That's one. Number two, I think 7 funds plus some of our bigger sovereign funds, sometimes this can be very, you know, what I call this economy of scale, where mandates are spread across 7 or 8 funds for startups. So perhaps this is also one one of the things that we can improve on, how do we synthesize between 7 or 8 of these funds into maybe several super funds with specific and more direct and more strategic mandates. But I think by and large, the government, we are a new government, but I must give credit to the government of Malaysia in succession since the 90s have been involved in providing at least the support system to startups in Malaysia.
Yeah, I would concur, right? I mean, we've had some really good success stories in Malaysia.
Sure.
We'll claim Grab as ours because it was born here. But we've got guys like Qasim and StoreHub and RPG Ventures and Naluri, and these are great companies that are born in Malaysia. Even my startup story, I had a startup many years ago. I received the Cradle Grant as well, and I've been through the training programs here. And so it's really been a part of my story as well. But I thought I'd double-click on something you said just now, which was quite interesting, actually, about the role of government. Because I've seen different governments take it very differently. So you look at a government like Singapore, which is also very interventionist. They provide grants, they provide fund-of-fund support, they provide training programs. And then you kind of look across the sea to Indonesia, and in Indonesia, their view is, and I've interviewed some guys from the ministry there as well, who have said that, the last few unicorns we created, we had nothing to do with it, so we don't do anything at all. We'll keep our hands clean. Do you feel that the government is better served working with the private sector, or do you feel it's better to kind of get more into, maybe at this stage of the country, the government should get more involved? What's your view on that?
The government has been involved, as I said. We have 7 funds dealing with startups at all stages of the startup ecosystem. We've got several sovereign funds also investing in companies in Malaysia, etc. I think the government should play the role of a leader. And by that, I mean leading the way, pioneering the way, perhaps assisting, at the area of, at the stage of ideation, maybe, perhaps, especially on high-risk sectors or high-risk industry, which may not be very attractive to private capitals at the onset. But at the end of the day, being a leader means also getting the private sector along. I think I said that before, that there must be a greater synergy, there must be greater cooperation between the government and private capital. You can't just stand on government alone. Government should not be feeder of the ecosystem. Government should be leader and enabler, as I said. Enabler in the sense that government should have, I'm very happy that we have the super roadmap. It's a nice name, nice acronym. With very specific targets to achieve. Pushing the government, compelling government agencies to come up with policies, and building the physical infrastructure. This is very important as well. So enabler, leader and enabler, rather than just merely being feeder, carrying the sector all the way.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So you're saying government should be like a market maker, creating the market that didn't exist before, and then allowing private sector partners to kind of get involved at a later stage.
Yeah, you can say that. I mean, to be honest, we can't expect private money to go into very high risk, unless there's something to be gained. So, but government is there. We have seen a lot of examples. The cell phones that we are using, the technology we are using in our cell phones, internet, AIs, all this started with government intervention. All this started with government investment. Search engine, the internet. So I think the role of the government as entrepreneur cannot be denied. But at the same time, the government must also empower and enable the private sector to also join in.
Excellent. I think, if we can shift gears at this point, because I think that's a really interesting place to move from, right? This year is a very interesting year for the economy in general, right?
Yep.
We've just come out of a major pandemic. There's market challenges around the world with banks and financial institutions. We're also seeing this wave of AI solutions coming out, and people are getting more efficient with AI. So my question is, what do you think the key factors that you believe will shape Malaysia's economy in 2023 and beyond, given the very interesting backdrop we're facing right now?
Way back in Chinese New Year this year. I know we are in Raya mode now. But during Chinese New Year, I made a speech in my constituency, Bukit Mertajam. I told the people of BM, I said, looking at reports, that was probably the second month or so I'm in MOF, and we were looking at financial reports, not only locally, but also internationally. Reports, data, statistics. I made a statement. I said, the worst is over for Malaysians. We have been through 2 years of pandemic. We have been through years of political instability. We have been through economic slowdown. But the worst is over this year, at least 2023. And I'm glad that I think around February, the governor of central bank also echoed that sentiment by saying, we are not going into a recession. So I think Malaysia can look towards a good year this year. There are challenges, geopolitical challenges. You mentioned AI, etc. But this is when people ask me what is the mode of the government, I said this is a government playing catching up. I remember, if you remember, Aaron, 2022, last year, probably about a year ago, Malaysians were all envy when we look at news. Jokowi was meeting Elon Musk. We were all very, very envious. We say, oh gosh, investments are going away to other countries, to neighboring countries, all that sorts of political chaos that we are dealing with in our country. But this year, just about last month when I was in Bali attending the ASEAN Finance Ministers meeting, as I was landing in Indonesia, one of the headlines on social media, Indonesian news, was Republic Indonesia, RI, were appealing to Tesla, but Tesla is coming to Malaysia. As you have seen, Tengku Zafro, the Minister for MITI, has announced that Tesla will be coming to Malaysia. And Tesla has also committed to, I'm not going to mention a number yet, leave it to Zaf, but they have committed to a good number, a very good number, for investing in supply chain in Malaysia, in the hundreds of millions USD. So I think, and of course the Prime Minister came back from China and announced 170 billion ringgit worth of investment coming from China, etc. So I think the government is in the catch-up mode. We want to catch up in terms of lost times, lost opportunities, and in doing that, we are dealing with, for example, trying to make life easier for all of you as businessmen, as entrepreneurs, SMEs. The government is very committed to improving the ease of doing business, for example. We talk about a lot of factories coming to us and say, we have faced problems with workers, with migrant workers in the last 2 years. So Prime Minister announced this year, we're going to do 3-day approval speed. And he asked me, 3-day approving anything in Malaysia is magic. No pun intended again, I think magic is here. It's magic. So when I met with some of the manufacturers, I asked them, the Prime Minister has committed 3 days. Did you get your approval in 3 days? Many of them came back and say, no, we didn't get in 3 days, unfortunately. But how many days? Some of them said 7, some of them said 10 days. So it's within a week to 10 days. And me, having no experience in applying for migrant workers, asked one of the some of these entrepreneurs. I said, "Is that a good time frame, 7 to 10 days?" And one of the answers that came back was, "Stephen, before this, it took us 6 months to a year. So we are very glad that it's 7 days. Of course, the target is still 3 days. But what I'm trying to say is this: we are trying to improve at every level of governance, especially in terms of making life easier for businesses in Malaysia. Prime Minister just announced about last month to reduce the time of OSC. OSC is basically the local government body for approving development permits from 72 days to 21 days. Again, I think it's magic coming from the local government background. So I think we can look forward to having a government which is very supportive of developing, doing business in Malaysia. The government is investing a lot in green growth, green economy. We are looking at a fiscal outlay of over 4.3 billion a year for the next 20 years in transition alone, in energy transition sector alone. In budget 2023, government has committed over 6 billion ringgit in sustainable link sector. So I think we can look towards to many exciting what do you call it, policies, many exciting measures, but at the end of the day, it is in the implementation. And I'm here to ensure that what has been committed, whether in the budget or in our speeches, will be implemented.
Excellent. That's great to hear. I got to say, though, 7 days is much faster than it takes for me to fix anything in the house if my wife asked me to do it, so
there you go.
It's pretty fast. I think it's really exciting to see that this government's moving pretty quickly on different things, and there's active movement to improve efficiencies.
Yeah.
If you're a startup founder in the room, and there are quite a number of people in the room right now, what do you think they should be looking to in terms of opportunities? What would be the opportunities that if you're a startup or SME, they should take advantage of in this landscape?
Now, I mentioned green, sustainable related sector. This is big, and the government is very much committed to this. I was in Bali, as I said, last month, and one of the things that I mentioned to the US representative was how also to ensure some of the green deals, the IRA packages in US, the green deals in Europe can also come here, and they are big in ESG green-related investment. So I think entrepreneurs in Malaysia should take advantage of this. As I said, over 6.3 billion in financing in Malaysia just in the 2023 budget, and there's a commitment of over 4.3 billion in fiscal outlay for the next 20 years in the areas of energy transitions. I think food security is another area of focus for our government. Our ministers has spoken about reverse investments in order to deal with the lack of land space in Malaysia in terms of agriculture, in terms of aquaculture. But I think startups have the DNA or the ability to deal with this limitation. So I think there is a lot of opportunity in this area of food security, healthcare. I mean, coming out from COVID-19, facing an aging population with population much more concerned with wellness today, and also dealing with the problem of the crowding or the crowding of our public healthcare delivery system. I think there is an opportunity for startups to come with measures. How do we deal with these gaps? So I think these are some of the areas that entrepreneurs in Malaysia can look forward to when it comes to government support, when it comes to the availability of resources, and also policy support system.
Yeah, it's really encouraging to hear that, because I think especially like clean energy transition, and even food security, these are major initiatives for not just this country, but for the whole world, right? Out of curiosity, how many people in the room are in a green energy business or clean tech business? You're in food security, though. I know you do. Clean energy. Specifically clean energy. Okay. You know one thing I've noticed?
That means there's very little competition here.
Exactly.
So there's a lot of opportunity.
So a year ago, we've been looking for startups, and we see like 1,000 companies a year in Malaysia and around the region as well. I hardly see any startup in Malaysia looking into this space. And, clean energy. Yeah, we see there are a couple of agri-tech startups that come our way, and we've invested in a couple. And I know there are a couple in the room whom I've seen just walking through the hall just now. But clean energy is, I think, a space that is ripe, and like you mentioned, was it 4.3 billion or 6 billion or something? 4.3 billion.
Only for the next 20 years.
For the next 20 years.
Yearly, annually for the next 20 years.
So if I was a founder
commitment
today,
of the government.
If I was a founder today, that's like the thing you should grab. It's like money that you could actually take advantage of and build a great business. That's a really interesting insight. I want to click a little bit more into the budget, since we announced it a couple of months ago. So it's fresh in the mind, I guess. And now it's about execution on the budget, right? And so notably, I guess, we saw incentives you mentioned. Cradle has been allocated some money as well, $50 million for growth in the startup ecosystem. There's venture capital incentives as well. What do you think is something that startups should take back from this budget in terms of what the government is trying to tell them about where you see, as the Ministry of Finance, the role of startups in the economy?
I think, one of the things that I talk about when I talk about budget 20 or Belanjawan 2023 is that how the government is going all out to rebuild our SMEs, to rebuild our businesses, especially after two very difficult years of the pandemic. There is a lot of incentives in the budget for SMEs, for startups. We are looking at over 40 billion ringgit in terms of various financing, microcredit, or even grants to SMEs in this country. We are even looking at a cheaper tax rate for SMEs, right?
You guys should clap cheaper tax rate for SMEs.
Many people ask me, Aaron, how is the government going to deal with the debt issue in the country? I said, we are always talking about the high debt, over 1 trillion. I think that is a very important question. But to me, you have to ask other questions as well. Number one, how do you deal? What are these debt fundings? If your debt is funding productive sectors, your debt is funding education, if your debt is funding startups, new ideas, innovations, your debt is used to build basic infrastructures, then I think that is okay. And the second question, of course, is to ask the availability, the ability of the government to service this debt. So it is not just about asking how much debt we have, but I think we always miss out the two questions: what are our debt funding, and how are we going to service our debt? And people ask me about tax all the time. I said, the government, how are we going to raise revenue? We are not just going to focus on tax. We're going to raise revenue. In fact, we are giving entrepreneurs a tax break of, a savings up to 3,000 ringgit for this year, because of what I said just now, the reduction of the first income bracket for SMEs. But what are we going to do to improve the financial situation of the country? Number one, we are going to catch up on investments. We're going to go big on investments. Public investment, basically government investment, has increased, the largest increase since 2019. We are going to go and pursue private investment, literally. You've seen the Prime Minister going from one country to another. He is the front man. He's the real poster boy, pursuing investors, businesses to come to Malaysia. We have seen Amazon opening in Malaysia. We have seen Tesla committed to Malaysia. We have seen the Chinese investment up to 170 billion ringgit. So the first thrust of increasing or improving the country's finance is not to tax the people, I always say, is to improve or increase in investments, whether government investment or private investment, especially private investment. And then, when all of you are able to make more money, we tax you. And we have to tax efficiently. We have to tax efficiently. And of course, the second thrust is tax efficiently. The third thrust is to ensure that the government, when we collect more tax money, we do not misuse the money. So these are the three fiscal strategy that the MOF is embarking. But other than that, I think you don't want me to list down all this initiative because you can read it on the internet. But when I received the invitation to come here, I told some of my staff, I said, it is very interesting that usually you put a politician up the stage and to listen to politicians. Many of the things that we have to say is Googleable. You can search from our press statements, you can search from Google. It would be interesting if one day the role is reversed. Imagine a room full of MPs, and then you have startup founders sitting here, giving your thoughts to the MPs, to the decision makers of this country. I think that would be very interesting. And here I want to make an offer. Ever since I came to this office, startup is not exactly under the purview of MOF. It's indirectly we have Penjana, of course, with us, but there's MITI, there's the Economic Ministry. But ever since I came to this ministry, I have been organizing private dinners for VCs, for PEs, and also for startups in this country. Is Kasem here today? Kasem's not here. They have graduated. But yeah, Kasem has came before. Some of you may in the audience, maybe I can't see you, but some of you may have attended my dinner. I just want to offer this, I asked my staff to do this. I've prepared a link where you can register your name. I can't guarantee that every one of you, I will have the space and opportunity to invite every one of you, but every 2 or 3 weeks, or perhaps monthly, I organize a private dinner with about 10 people from the startup ecosystem, including the PEs and the VCs, to talk to you and to listen to you actually. So that's the reversal of the role, to listen to you. How do we, as government, adapt to the evolving nature of this sector? So if you are interested to attend, to be invited to one of these dinners, like I say, I can't guarantee that I will be able to invite all of you, but I'm going to do this throughout the whole year. If you're interested, you can register yourself in this link, bit.ly/PK as in Penjana Capital, PK Networking. I belanja. So it's free of charge.
Free food, guys.
So, instead of me telling you what are the budget initiatives and listing down, enumerating down all these things that you can actually Google on MOF site, the truth is I want to listen to all of you. And actually, in my 2 or 3 dinners that I've organized, we have taken some notes and hoping to influence some of the existing policies, because I know this sector is evolving all the time. And government, even super as a 10-year roadmap cannot be static. It must be flexible. It must be able to adapt to changes and the evolution, not only here in Malaysia but globally. So I want to listen to you.
That's great, guys. Did you guys get the link just now? Yeah.
bit.ly/. PK Networking.
PK Networking.
Yeah.
P as in
PK.
Pakistan, K as in Kazakhstan,
Yeah.
Networking.
Networking.
Yeah.
You going to register as well?
I guess I have to, right?
Yeah.
We all register together, okay? And
I think the next dinner is coming very soon. I'm going to pick somebody from this list.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. I see Freda standing here. Do we have any more time? Maybe 5 more minutes max?
Yeah,
okay,
good.
Cool. So I think it's really encouraging to see that you're doing these dinners, right? And I don't think I've seen another minister do this on a regular basis in such a meaningful way. If the people here register for these dinners, what do you hope that they come prepared with, and what can they expect to go back with from these dinners?
They can come expecting good food and good company, but I think the purpose of this dinner is to really to deal with this situation. A situation where you have about 100 people on the floor, and then it's really a one-way flow. I think in a context of our dinner, it's a private dinner. As I said, it's a private dinner, so it's off government. A lot of it is from my own pocket, or hosted by one of these bigger players in the industry. But I want to hear your problem. I want to hear what are your pain points. I want to hear the obstacles that you face in dealing with perhaps maybe government bureaucracy, government processes, your license permit applications, or even your grant applications. I want to hear all this. I want to hear your suggestions. How do we improve not only your company, how do we improve your sector? How do we improve the Malaysian economy as a whole? How do we improve our society as a whole? So I hope to listen and learn from you.
Awesome. I think we'll just have one last question just before we wrap up. So I always like to end with like a bit more of a visioning kind of question to kind of wrap up what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a session today. We all gathered in Rekha Space. I don't know if there'll be a cradle next year, but assuming we're here 1 year from now, right? And the people who attended this room listened to the session, they got a lot from it. What do you hope to see, at least 1 year from now, but maybe 10 years from now from the local startup ecosystem? There's a lot of conversation around, are we going to create unicorns? Or are we going to create quality companies? But what do you hope to see come out of the Malaysian startup ecosystem? And what do you hope for the people in this room? What's your ambition for them?
No, if you are talking about deliverables, then we can also look into the super roadmap, right?
Sure.
The startup ecosystem roadmap. You talk about 5,000 startups, 5 unicorns, I think, 10,000 coders. But and also my personal aspiration for this country is to really to move on from merely industrialization. We are one of the earliest industrialized country in the region, so we have the competitive advantage. We have the experience being one of the first mover. Perhaps moving on from industrialization to green industrialization, not green wave, green industrialization. But ultimately, if there is something that for me define the nature of entrepreneurial spirit or even startup, is this. We talk about the Silicon Valley model where there is a lot of emphasis placed on creating new stuff, or the China model where there's a lot of emphasis on, or perhaps more weightage on copying. Both are equally valid. So I think for me, the entrepreneurial spirit is represented by what Bruce Lee said: be like water. I think let's not, it's easy to dance when the music is still playing. So you sometimes dance to Silicon Valley, sometimes dance to China model. But I think we have to be adaptable. I remember when we were young, we were taught, our education system taught us to answer questions. So we go to exams, we answer questions. But in the age of ChatGPT, I think all of us by now are aware that it is not the answers that matter more than perhaps the questions that we put into the AI system. So I think the entrepreneurial spirit should represent that value, which is asking the right questions and continue to ask questions. I hope to, 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we have Malaysians who are critical enough to think about the biggest problem of our century. When we talk about flying cars, I remember at that time I was in the Youth and Sports Ministry, and there were a lot of criticism against flying car. We made fun of flying cars, right? All of us laugh at flying cars. Of course, Aerodyne recently showed me their flying cars. After 4 years, we laugh at them. At that time, I made a speech in front of young people, young Malaysians. I said, I rather we are all obsessed with flying cars. I rather Malaysians of all race and religion made it our obsession to be engineers, to be mathematicians, to be scientists, to be coders, to be business managers, trying to solve or obsessed with solving the most difficult questions of our century, how to make car flies, rather than being obsessed with the colors of our skins and our religious beliefs. So, I hope, Malaysians, starting from you are the critical thinkers of our generations. I hope that spirit can be duplicated, not just in this sector, but also in the Malaysian society at large, as we are building and rebuilding our country.
Thank you so much. I don't think I could have ended on a better note. Thank you for spending your time with us. I enjoyed your candor, and I enjoyed your willingness to share with us. My takeaways are, we should be like water, and we should focus on changing the world that's around us. And yeah, you can have a drink of water, I guess. Guys, would you put your hands together? Please thank YB Steven Sim for being with us today. Thank you so much. It was a great session.
Thank you.